Welcome to the Gaudium et Spes podcast, where every other week we bring you Catholic teachings and stories of faith from people throughout the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Now, here are your hosts, Suzanne McNinch and Ches Filippini.
Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you haven't, please check out our last episode where we had Sean and Kathy Salamita talk about the adoption process. It really was a great episode, but we're on to a new one, and Ches and I are back in the studio, and boy, do we have a great one for you here today. Through the masterful eyes of our producer, we were able to get both Bishop Wack and Bishop Parkes on a podcast together. Ches, I think our viewers are really going to enjoy this one.
It's a new era, people. Bishops interviewing other bishops for podcasts. It's like, if you had said this to somebody 40 years ago, like one day bishops will be media personalities of their own and
That's
they will
right.
interview each other, they've been like, what are you talking about? But it's cool. It's through the power of technology, as you said, and Derek, our great producer, pulling them together.
I know.
Yeah, they had a great conversation. We'll preview that in a second. We got to check in where we're at, though.
We do.
It's November, as it is Adoption Awareness Month, as we have this episode for. But anyhow, we'll start as we always do with the first line from Gaudium et Spes, which goes, "The joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the men of this age, especially those who are poor or in any way afflicted. These are the joys and the hopes, the griefs and anxieties of the followers of Christ." All right, Suzanne.
Right.
It's chilly out a little bit.
It
refreshing.
is.
What's going on?
It is refreshing. You know, we're kind of getting into the holiday spirit here.
Yeah.
I know the stores started a lot sooner than we did, but, you know, we still have Thanksgiving to cross before we get to Christmas.
Yeah.
But
tell that to the radio stations playing Christmas music already.
Exactly.
What in the world?
Yeah. We also have Veterans Day coming up this weekend. So just a shout out to all of our veterans within the diocese and around the world. Thank you for your service and everything that you've done. We're thinking about you and praying about you. And especially for our POW and MIAs out there, it's always great to remember those individuals who have paid and given the ultimate sacrifice in so many ways.
Same to you.
Yeah.
Thank you to this veteran right next to me. Cool. Yeah. What's going on in this world? Work with tons of kid stuff as always, or whatever. Just celebrated Maria's birthday, her 5th birthday, which was fun. But had a great Called and Gifted workshop here in Pensacola this past weekend. Called and Gifted is essentially it's a I want to call them. It's a ministry that helps people discern their charism. So we're all gifted as baptized Christians with the Holy Spirit, and especially those of us who are confirmed have that enlivening of the Holy Spirit. But a lot of people just kind of don't really pay much attention to where the Holy Spirit has specifically gifted them. We pay more attention to our natural talents. But this apostolate by the Catherine Sand Institute focuses on really like, no, the Holy Spirit has given you specific charisms to build up the kingdom in your parish or in your community in a specific way. And we've done this workshop twice. This time we did it in Nativity here in Pensacola. A lot of the UWF students were here from the campus ministry. It's great. People just come alive. It's a great way to just kind of reflect on how has God called me in a specific way to do his work in the world. So we loved it. Had a great time. 60 plus folks over here. So anyhow, if you're a parish and you're listening, it's a great workshop for your own parish to come and check out. So that was cool. All right. As you said, we've got 2 bishops talking to one another. As you know, Bishop Bill is our current bishop, Bishop Bill Wack, and then our previous bishop, who was his predecessor, is Bishop Gregory Parkes, who's now the Bishop of St. Petersburg. We're not going to do any wrap-up. It's not really a teaching episode, right? But their conversation is just a lovely window into their personal lives as bishops. Also the unique reality that both of them have brother priests, which is so cool. And of course, Bishop Parkes' younger brother is not just a priest, he's a bishop as well.
Exactly.
So they have a great conversation relating stories about what that dynamic is. And they just have some lovely reflections on our diocese. So Bishop Parkes speaks very lovingly about his time here, the smallness of our diocese in terms of its parish size, the bigness of our diocese in terms of how much area it is to cover. So anyhow, it's a lovely conversation as we just celebrated the anniversary of our diocese on November 6th. So we hope you enjoy, and we'll see you next episode as we interview a great men's ministry in Tallahassee called That Man Is You. See you then.
Hello, everybody. Great. So for this episode of Gaudium et Spes, it's a special episode. It's the first time we are we're doing this remotely with not just me or someone here in the studio or at another place, but I am joined by my brother Bishop Greg Parkes, and who it was probably the best thing that ever happened to this diocese, I believe, as Bishop of the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, now serves as the Bishop of the Diocese of St. Petersburg. But we just thought it would be good. I've shared my story about receiving that call and coming here, and how that was maybe a little jarring, difficult at first, but how joyful it is now. And we've heard some other people share theirs. Archbishop Rhodey shared his story as well, which I thought was interesting. So we thought it would be good to have Bishop Parkes on here as well, because we share so much in common, not only this diocese, but also our love for the martyrs and the cause for the martyrs of La Florida, and so many other things. And our brothers, both brothers are priests. His brother is a bishop, so that's kind of neat as well. So welcome, Bishop Parkes. Nice to have you.
Thanks, Bishop Bill. It's great to be with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, awesome. Good. Thank you. Well, we could just jump into this how we became bishops. I think that'd be neat. But especially for you, if you're okay with it, it'd be neat to hear what it was like. Yes, getting that first call while you were pastor, but then also getting the call to go serve in another diocese, and how that was for you. I know for here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. That'd be great.
Of course. Well, important days in our life, we remember them like they were just yesterday. And for me, I received that phone call from the nuncio, Archbishop Vigano, on March the 13th of 2012. I was actually holding or conducting a meeting at the Pastoral Center or at the Chancery in Orlando, where I was working. And I got a message from my secretary, a text message, at my parish, Corpus Christi Parish in Celebration. And the text message said that the nuncio called the parish, and he would like for you to call him back. So I saw this text message come up on my phone, but I wasn't able to excuse myself right away. So I waited a little while before I did call him back. And I thought to myself, why is the nuncio calling me? I mean, I'm nobody. Either he has some news for me, or I'm in trouble. I wasn't sure which it was.
Right.
So I did call him back, and he had informed me that then Pope Benedict had appointed me the 5th bishop of the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee. Of course, this news was totally unexpected to me. I knew that the diocese, I think, was open at that time, with Bishop Ricard having retired. But I had no idea that I was being considered to be named bishop there. So I remember asking Archbishop Vigano if I could think about it and pray about it. And his words to me were, well, Father Parkes, you can do that, or you can just tell me yes right now. And so he didn't have a lot of patience for wanting to wait. So I just told him that I am grateful to the Holy Father for the confidence that he placed in me, and I will do my best to fulfill this calling as Bishop of Pensacola-Tallahassee.
Gosh, thank you for your yes. I say that to all the priests and all the bishops, especially, but because it's not something you can take for granted. I think it's public. He's telling people, but some of the people are saying no, or please no, or and some people dread getting that call, so not dread, but you know what I mean? Or they think, gosh, I couldn't do it. It's too much, the office of bishop.
And I don't think, and maybe you can relate to this, in my priesthood, of course, we make a promise of obedience when we're ordained priests. For a diocesan priest, it's to the diocesan bishop and his successors. For you as a religious, it was probably to your superior at that time and his successors.
That's right.
And I don't think I've ever said no to an assignment. I've always just trusted in God's will, and that if he called me to do something, if he calls any of us to do something, that he will give us what we need to fulfill his will, always, for his glory.
Absolutely.
I have to say, with that phone call, one of the hardest things was he said, this is not going to be made public for a week. And you're under what's called the pontifical secret, so you're not able to share this news with anyone. Fortunately, they called Bishop Noonan, who was my bishop in Orlando at the time, and told him. So he came into my office and congratulated me, and we talked for a little while. I do think I talked to my brother, to be very honest, because I just needed some spiritual support, and so I did share the news with him. But he was able to keep it quiet, and so a week later, it was publicly announced. I had traveled up to Pensacola for the public announcement and press conference, as you know what that's like, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yes. You said you talked to your brother. I figured I was caught off guard. I didn't get a text. No one said, hey, the nuncio is going to call or he's on the line or anything. It's just, I picked up the phone. People know that I was working outside the church on an air conditioner, actually. And it just said Washington, D.C., unknown number. And so I thought this should be interesting, and it just all happened like that. And where you were working in Orlando, you certainly know about Pensacola-Tallahassee. I don't know if had you been here before in the diocese?
Well, as some of the faithful up there might remember, I did graduate from Florida State University in 1986. But I was familiar only with Tallahassee. I had never been to any other part of the diocese, had never been to Pensacola until the day I landed there for the announcement and the press conference. So it was a totally new experience for me. And so anyway, but it was exciting because it was a whole new experience, a whole new area that I didn't know anything about. And I quickly came to fall in love with it. So it was a real blessing in my life.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I forgot. Of course, you're a proud graduate of FSU. But I don't know, at the time, as an undergrad, you're not thinking, I'm in a diocese, another diocese or whatever.
Now, Bishop Bill, when you were appointed as the outgoing bishop, I was notified of your appointment, and I do remember giving you a phone call when I called you to congratulate you on being appointed the 6th Bishop of Pensacola-Tallahassee. If I remember, you were out to lunch with your staff, I think, from your parish.
Actually, it was all the teachers, from the school.
Celebrating something. I don't remember what it was, but you stepped out for a few moments, and then we had a chance to talk, and I congratulated you.
Boy, I appreciated that, because as you said, you can't talk to anyone. I did ask for permission to tell my brother, because I figured I can leverage this now. He just surprised me and I said yes, so I'm going to leverage it and get a few things. And so it was that. But other than that, it was just really, I wouldn't say lonely feeling, but you feel isolated. You can't talk about it, and yet things that are going to change not only your life, but the lives of those around you. And so when you called, it was just very welcomed. And I remember I was at a lunch with our teachers celebrating the last day. We had a half day. The kids had all left. And then it's a tradition there at St. Ignatius in Austin at the parish to go to dinner then and lunch. And that's when you called. And they know, I told the teachers, I would tell my staff, look, if we're in a meeting and I get a phone call, unless it's an emergency, I don't look at it. I won't answer it. And I'd appreciate it if you do the same thing, Well, they saw on my face, I tried, that was the second big surprise, I guess, getting another call from another bishop. And I thought, oh, this is probably important. So I just said, sorry, everybody, I've got to take this. And they saw I was pacing outside the restaurant. They could see me while I was talking to you. But it just brought me a lot of comfort that you said, I know this is a surprise. I know you weren't expecting it, but they're praying for you. They're praying for a bishop. It's a beautiful place. You're going to love it. That meant the world to me. So thank you for that.
And I of course, it brought me a lot of joy that a new bishop was named to replace me so quickly. I think it was only about 6 months after I moved to St. Petersburg to begin my ministry here. So that was a relatively short period of time for a new bishop to be named. And I was just very happy for the priests and the people of the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee.
Good. Thank you. Yes. And you had mentioned that you were informed, not just because you were the former bishop of Pensacola-Tallahassee, but I think it's interesting for people to know the bishops in that area then know, so that because, it's somebody coming into the province who will be working with you, and you can begin to pray for him and even reach out, although I don't know if that's encouraged as much as it is. Well, for you, it made sense, but for us. But that's just kind of neat for people to know. All this is a mystery. It was a mystery to me, and it's a mystery to the lay people. Not that they need to know everything, but I think they really appreciate hearing things like that, especially that the fact that we were surprised. It did catch us off guard. It was joyful, it's humbling, but it's also quite scary. I think that's what I say for me. And it was difficult to leave the parish that I loved and the people that I loved. I knew that it was going to be hard for them as well. So just to go through all of that. So then you are in a unique position between the two of us here of having received another phone call to go to another place. Do you mind sharing that? And maybe not all the details, but just especially from this point of view, the point of view of the diocese here, how that was for you to know that you were going to leave.
Sure. So I was already up in Baltimore for the November meeting of the bishops. So the USCCB, all the bishops meet in November of every year in Baltimore, as we will be shortly. And it was a Saturday afternoon. I had just arrived. I was in my hotel room watching some college football, as I like to do on Saturday if I'm able to. Mm-hmm. My schedule permits. And I see a call comes up on my cell phone, which says Washington, D.C. And I was afraid to answer it because the only one I knew in Washington was the nuncio. And so I answered the call, and he informed me that Pope Francis had appointed me the fifth bishop of the Diocese of St. Petersburg. Again, I just said, thank you, and trusting in the Holy Father's judgment, and with the Lord's help and with his strength, I'll do my best to fulfill this appointment. Then I remember the first thing I did, as you know, Bishop Bill, at the hotel where we hold our November meeting, there's always a chapel with the Blessed Sacrament. So the first thing I did after I hung up with the nuncio was to go and to find the chapel and then sit there and pray in front of the Blessed Sacrament that God will give me what I need to fulfill this new assignment. It was announced, probably it was a little bit of a delay because my predecessor, Bishop Lynch, was ill at the time, so he wasn't able to be present for an immediate press conference. So it was almost 2 weeks before the public announcement was made. I think it was on November 28th. It was right after Thanksgiving that the public announcement was made. And then more or less 30 days later, I was in St. Petersburg. So I spent that Christmas packing up and moving from Pensacola down to St. Petersburg. So it all happens very quickly. And I think what I realized at that point more than ever in my life is, as priests and particularly as bishops, our lives are not our own. That we truly give them to the Lord, and hopefully in humble service and obedience, and we trust in his will. But it's not about us. When you're asked to do something, you do it. And I think obedience to me in that way is a great gift. And I'm sure you experience this as a religious, because if you promise obedience and you adhere to it, when you're asked to do something, you don't think of all the reasons why you can't do it. Mm-hmm. I could have thought of so many reasons why I didn't want to leave Pensacola-Tallahassee. First of all, I loved it there. But there was just one reason for me to do so, and that's because the Holy Father appointed me to come to my new diocese. So, but anyway, it all happened very quickly, and I was installed here in St. Petersburg as bishop on January 4th. So it all happened very, very quickly.
Wow. That's an added challenge, I think, just in your life. But I like what you said about it's not about us. I'm sure, well, you just alluded to it, but for me, when I got the call, my thought wasn't on, oh my gosh, can I do this? What are the details of the move? And I've got to pack up. I've got to do all this. It wasn't really that. And during those 9 days that I had to hold that pontifical secret, the grieving was more about the parish and the people there. And it just so happened that so many people would come up to me during that time and they'd say, with some news about the future, we're getting married and we want you to marry us. Or, the kids on the last day of school, they said, bye, Father Bill, see you in the fall. And I would just say, okay, we'll see, and so I'm sure that happened with you with here, thinking about the priests here and the people here and how that would, kind of affect them. And it changes, not just change their life, but it affects their life very much when their bishop is moved and a new bishop comes in. And
even though I was only a bishop of Pensacola-Tallahassee for 4.5 years, more or less, I became very attached to it. And as I said, I came to really love it. So that aspect in a personal way was very, very difficult because I I guess I thought I was going to be there for a long time. And but you don't know. I mean, you can get a call tomorrow and your life changes once again. So that's one of the maybe challenging things, but also one of the beautiful things about our ministry as priests and bishops is that we are serving at God's will. And whatever he asks of us, we do.
Well, it's neat to follow you, to be in the office where you were, and then to go to the churches and celebrate Mass and other functions. I haven't told you this, but it's just I always love to see your name on things. There's still some files there, and of course in the archives and everything, to see your name there. It gives me great joy and pride to follow you in that regard. And then also it's kind of fun for me to imagine you in the various churches of our diocese or something. It's kind of funny for them, for the people here. They're like, oh yeah, Bishop Parkes he was great here and he did this. And, or, at a place like St. Peter, they like to talk about how, how the presider's chair is right there against the wall and it's a very low ceiling. And even when I stand up with the mitre on, I have to bend over a little bit and they say, oh, Bishop Parkes, you should see that. They all laughed about that.
Yeah, you, Bishop Bill, you're very active on social media, as I am as well, as far as sharing our Episcopal ministry, what we're doing. I know you do a Thursday evening live Facebook broadcast. I've watched that a few times. I've even texted in some comments from time to time. But yeah, I do follow you, so I see the different places that you're visiting and what you're doing, and it does bring back a lot of great memories. My current diocese is very different from Pensacola-Tallahassee in the sense that it's much larger population-wise, much smaller area-wise. We're only a little over 3,000 square miles, whereas Pensacola-Tallahassee, I think, is somewhere around 14 to 15,000 square miles.
Right.
I think you have 18 counties in the diocese. Here I have 5. Of course, 2 of them are huge. Pinellas and Hillsborough, that's St. Petersburg and Tampa are 2 major cities. And then we have 3 northern counties. The further I go north in my diocese from Tampa and St. Pete, the more it reminds me of your diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, in that it becomes much more rural, more country-ish, more southern. And so that brings back a lot of memories as well. In fact, I will tell my priest secretary or somebody I'm with as we're driving somewhere up north, and I'll say, this really reminds me a lot of my previous diocese up in the Panhandle.
That's right.
And if you can indulge me, I loved the smaller parishes of the diocese up there. These parishes that maybe only have a couple hundred parishioners. And they would typically maybe have one Mass the Sunday that I was going. So everybody would come. And then afterward, they'd have usually a potluck over in the parish hall or parish center. People would bring the food. And literally, you could meet every single person, greet every single person who was there. Unfortunately, I have a lot of large parishes in my diocese, some smaller ones, but some very, very large ones, and it's not as easy to do that when I visit a parish. But
I imagine that would be
that is one of the things I do miss about the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, was just the warmth of the people and the more rural nature of some of the parts of the diocese up there.
I must say, I do love that. I love, great crowds and congregations and everything. The bigger, the better it seems sometimes. But I have really come to love all of our parishes, and as you say, especially, that's most of our parishes, the smaller parishes. And that you just made me think about this, something that happened one of my first months here, and you'll know the place, but it's Immaculate Conception Parish in Perry. Oh, yeah. That I remember that day I was going to drive all the way out there for one Mass or something. I didn't know if I was going to stay overnight, but had come all the way back. And it's about 4 hours all the way from here. It's a long way. And I was tired after a long drive, and I there weren't any cars. I didn't see any cars there. This was a Saturday evening Mass, and it was already getting dark. And I was carrying all my gear, you know how that is, just carrying it there. And I thought, I wonder if anyone's going to be here. I came all this way. And I was kind of opening the door with my foot. I remember trying to get it open because my hands were full. And as I did, this warm light kind of came out from the church. It was nice and warm in there. And I looked in, and there was a whole bunch of people. The church was full. I don't know where they parked, but they all saw me and just started applauding. And I almost started crying. It was such a great feeling of welcome and joy, and that happens a lot, as you know.
You mentioned Immaculate Conception. We were just together in Tallahassee on October the 12th. Maybe you're going to talk about that, the purpose for that gathering. But for some reason, my GPS took me back to St. Petersburg, heading south. It didn't take me on the Interstate 10 over to 75 South. It took me down, I think, on 19 and 27, which goes right by Immaculate Conception.
That's right.
And it was great to see that parish, although, boy, you could see, I think there was some damage maybe in that area. You could see some signs were blown out and roofs and so forth. So I hope and pray that the people in that area, up in the Big Bend area, but Perry specifically, are doing well.
Yeah, that's where Hurricane Idalia went right through there. And we were blessed. Fortunately, there was minimal damage to our facilities there. The parishioners, though, there were some homes lost and everything. And so, they're still cleaning up, but the community really came together as they do after an experience like that. But you mentioned that we were together a couple of weeks ago. And for the closing of the cause for, oh boy, there's the long title, the close of the cause for the diocesan phase for the beatification of the martyr of Antonio Cuipa, servant of God and companions, martyrs of La Florida. There you go. So, and I've explained that we talked about that here. We had Dr. Mary Soha she was here for an episode, which was fantastic. And we filmed that there on that property with her. But so the people know about that. But that was the close of the official close of the cause for canonization, beatification. And we're sending that off to Rome now for their consideration. But it's really interesting to me, I think, and to a lot of us, Bishop Parkes, that you were there. You were the bishop who opened the cause officially, even though, as we noted there, it had been suggested, the opening had been suggested and hoped for centuries, actually. But you were the one who got to be able to open the cause. And how awesome, how beautiful that you were there at the close of the diocesan phase as well. And you spoke, you gave a few words after the Mass about that. Would you like to say anything about that?
Sure. So it was really a day of joy, great joy for me as the former bishop there, and the one who, as you said, did open the cause canonically 8 years ago. In fact, the Mass that we held for the closing of the cause for beatification, I think, was the exact 8-year anniversary from the date that we gathered on that same site just outside of Tallahassee to open the cause with a Mass and then a ceremony afterward. And to see it come to this phase, to now leave the diocese and to be sent over to the dicastery for the causes of saints in Rome, for them to begin that phase of the process, just brought me great joy to see it get this far. As you mentioned, this cause dates back to probably the 1930s, I think. Bishop Gannon at the time kind of initiated some of the research into it. And it had periods where it advanced, but then periods where it just lay dormant for years and years and years. When I arrived as bishop in 2012, shortly after that, I began to hear about these martyrs. And to be very honest, being from the Diocese of Orlando, I was not familiar with the history of the church in North Florida, but began to learn about them. And I was intrigued and interested. And eventually, a few years after I had been there, I met with a couple of women, specifically Lynn Mangan and Heather Jordan, who met with me at the cathedral in Tallahassee and just shared with me their passion for trying to research this and to find out if there is something here that we need to recognize and to celebrate. And after that meeting, I just was inspired to say, look, let's find out once and for all. Is there a cause here? Are these martyrs? If they are, we need to honor them and to recognize them. And so that's why the closing Mass was such a joy to get to the phase. So I started it, but others did all the work on it.
Thank you.
And but it was just great to see it. To me, it was a historic day, I think, for the church in Florida. Just marks another chapter in the history of the Catholic Church in Florida. And the cause stretches over several dioceses, including my own here in St. Petersburg. The proto-martyr is Father Luis de Cancer, who was a Spanish Dominican priest who traveled here to the shores of Florida, and he was believed to be martyred in the year 1549 on the shores of Tampa Bay in an area which is called Safety Harbor now. And so he's one of the martyrs that's in the cause. So I still maintain great interest and support for the cause, and just hope and pray that we will soon celebrate the beatification of these holy men, holy women, and children.
Yes. Two things. One is that earlier this year, we had a gathering of the historians and the tribunal there in Tampa. You know that, and we were there to do more research, which led to finally the finishing of the cause and the close of the diocesan phase. But we went on a little tour there, and we saw the place where Father de Cancer, where
Yes.
he was martyred there, and there's a plaque downtown, or whatever the area that is, a beautiful area, part of Tampa, a plaque honoring the martyrs who or the first missionaries, some of whom were put to death. So there is, as we call it, a fame. There is a growing interest in the martyrs, in receiving their help and their intercession from heaven. That was one of the things we wanted to prove to Rome, is that this is not just a couple of us who think this should happen, but more and more people know the martyrs and call upon them and draw inspiration from them and believe they are interceding for them. So that's part of what we had to do, is to prove that we believe this should happen for the good of the whole church.
And as you know, so many of the martyrs of our church are from the early church periods, the first several centuries. They're martyrs, and so many are priests or religious who were martyred, who made that profession of faith with their blood. I think what's inspiring with this particular cause, and I think appealing to the dicastery in Rome, is that the lead martyr, Antonio Anija, is a layperson. And he was married. He was a husband and a father. He was a leader within his own tribe community. And the cause also includes priests and religious. But it does include, as I said, laypersons, men, women, and children. And I think that's very inspiring and necessary in our world today. I think we not only need to honor them and to remember them, but we need to pray for their intercession, and particularly our young people today, because they face so many challenges and persecutions and temptations. And I think to be able to look to some of the younger martyrs that are being proposed here could be very inspirational.
That's right. And even one is an unborn child. One of the martyrs was pregnant, and so she was forced to, they tried to get her to renounce the faith, and she didn't. So they killed her child first in the womb, and then they killed her. And so that child is he's one of the companions. It's just really good for us inspires us to, no matter what our state or stage in life, to say yes to God, to be connected to our Lord. So that's great. We just have a couple minutes left, but I think it's interesting to me, and probably to people who are watching or listening to this, that to know how we cooperate, how we work together as bishops here in the province of Miami. What is a province? A province, is, well, you're the canon lawyer, you know better how to explain that. But how would you?
Province would be a geographical grouping of dioceses, archdioceses that are close in proximity to each other.
All right, great. And so our province is province of Miami. So the Archbishop of Miami, Thomas Wensky, he is the metropolitan. Doesn't mean that he's over us, but he gathers us together when we celebrate, say, the Red Mass in Tallahassee for our legislators. Then he would be the one to preside. Or when we have a meeting just for our province bishops, he presides at that. But it's just really neat. We do work together. We meet several times several times a year. At the seminaries, because we're on the boards of our two seminaries down in Miami and Boynton Beach, but also just for province concerns, and so I draw a lot of assistance, joy from those gatherings. Again, as a new bishop, when I came here 6.5 years ago, I had no idea what to expect for the first meeting, but I think our first meeting was more of a social one, just for a couple of days, And I thought, when's the other shoe going to drop? When are they going to say we've got this huge agenda? We didn't have much of an agenda. And it was just so comforting to me to be together with brother bishops, although I didn't consider myself a brother at that point. I was just the new guy. But anyway, it's great to be able to work with you. And what's your experience of working with other bishops in the province and beyond?
I would concur with everything you're saying. And we are blessed, I believe, here in the province of Florida, province of Miami, in that we get along very, very well as bishops. We work well together. We socialize well together. And we share fraternity when we come together and prayer. And I think that's important. And it's a blessing to me to be part of that group of, I'll say it, brother bishops here in the state. And I always look forward to our time together. Of course, Bishop Bill, as you know, over the next few years, I think 4 of our bishops here in the state of Florida will be approaching retirement age. So potentially in the next 3 to 4 years, there could be a lot of change here in the province of Miami and the state of Florida. And I think you and I will be the senior bishops, believe it or not, in terms of number of years here in the state when all that happens. So something to pray about and to look forward to.
You are the senior then of the two of us. And even with Bishop Holmeyer, then he's in St. Augustine, he'd be even younger in terms of he is younger than both of us. So you'd be the senior. Wow. Well, that's great. I have great hope for the future in you. I don't know, for me, nobody's ever said senior bishop or expert in anything. Although because of the cause of the martyrs, I inherited that title, being the Bishop of Competence. Again, I don't know if anyone's ever said that I'm competent in anything, but that's great.
I love your sense of humor.
Well, it's just a couple more minutes. I know you could go on and on, but can you just say something about your brother being a bishop and what that's like?
Sure. So my younger brother, Stephen, is now bishop of the Diocese of Savannah. He was ordained bishop there in September of the year 2000, which was right during COVID. So it was a little bit of a quieter celebration than you and I had at our ordinations. But he's doing so well up there. His diocese is about 2/3 of the state of Georgia. It's huge. It's twice the size of Pensacola-Tallahassee diocese. He has 90 counties. And population-wise, it's very similar. I think they have about 75,000 Catholics, and less than 5% are Catholic in that area. But even just geographically and so forth, it's very similar to your diocese. But he's doing great. And the Lord blessed us in calling us first to be brother priests. Well, I say first to be brothers, but then to be brother priests, to share that vocation, and for the last 3 years to now be brother bishops. He's a great friend of mine. He's my brother, but he's also I think we're a source of strength to each other with regard to our ministry, and always look forward to seeing him. I don't get to see him too often, except mostly at meetings, and then as you know, we're busy during that time. But we will be getting together shortly. So, and I just, as a side note, because I remember when he found out he was appointed bishop, the nuncio actually called me that same day. He said, you're his brother, so I think you need to know.
Wow.
So I found out the same day that he did. And of course, first thing I did was to call him, to congratulate him, assure him of my love and of my prayers.
Fantastic. I know how that conversation, how joyful that can be. My brother is not a bishop, but he's a priest. And so when I called him and said, I got this call from the nuncio, we just kind of laughed and celebrated about it and had a million questions of each other and just delighted in our vocation and our being brothers. I like what you say, it's always been a blessing to be brothers, and then to be brother priests is just icing on the cake. I love it. And for your brother, I didn't get to meet him until his ordination, I don't believe. And now I can just tell you, objectively speaking, what a great guy. I love talking to him. And, we were both new. I had a couple years on him of experience, but we'll call each other when we see each other at the meetings. We'll say, hey, how are you handling this? And for instance, I heard that he hired a COO, and we were looking into that. And so I called him and asked him about that. And he said, I'll send you all the info and everything, the resume, not the resume, but the job description and everything. That was very helpful for us. I love when we can do that.
With my brother, of course, I've been a bishop now over 11 years, and he's been 3 years, so a little more experience. But I wanted him to experience what it's like to be a bishop. People will say, oh, did you give your brother all the input and all the kind of the lowdown on being a bishop? And I can honestly say, no, I didn't. I wanted for him to experience that as I did as a new bishop. It's nothing you ever train for or prepare for, so it's kind of almost on-the-job training. You do have struggles along the way. Some things I look back on and I said, I wish I would have done this differently. And you learn from that and you go forward. So he knows I love him and that I'm there for him. If he ever does have a question, and he does occasionally call me and ask a question or ask for some input on something. And I do the same with him. So we're very close, and we do work closely together in our ministry.
That's great. And he has something that you didn't have. He has the experience of having the experience of a brother, a great bishop who's also a brother. So I'm sure that's awesome for him. So,
yeah, we're the, just a little note, we're the 11th set of brothers in the history of the Catholic Church here in the United States, 11th, and currently the only brothers, unless your brother Neil gets a phone call sometime soon.
Wow. No comment. I don't know. He's doing really well in his parish up outside of Boston right now. So I think he's very happy. Well, great. Well, thank you for this time together. I look forward to seeing you in Baltimore at our next meeting in a couple of weeks. And I always look forward to being together. And I think we have another meeting then coming up. That might be the social one, right? I think. Anyway, it's good. There's not a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we have a retreat coming up in January. Bishops go on retreat together every January here in the Tampa area. Always look forward to that. And then there's other opportunities at our seminaries for board meetings and things during the course of the year. So we do get to see each other quite a bit, and I always enjoy that. So thank you.
Great. Good. Well, thank you very much for your time and for your ministry here in the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee and now in St. Petersburg. And thanks for your friendship and your brotherhood to me.
Amen. And to the faithful of the Diocese of Pensacola-Tallahassee, I wish the Lord's blessing upon each of you. And always remember you with love and with gratitude for my time there as bishop. May God bless you.
Thank you, Bishop Parkes. God bless you as well.
Thank you for tuning in today to the Gaudium et Spes podcast. If you would like to know more about our podcast, please visit our website, gaudiumetspes.net, or go to ptdiocese.org and click the button that says podcast. If you listen to the audio version from an app such as Apple Podcast, Spotify, or iHeartRadio, be sure to rate, review, and comment. If you watched us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe or leave us a comment there as well. Thank you for joining us.